Hi, I'm Malcolm McKee, District Commissioner at Leatherhead District Scouts. We recently ran an evening on our Zoom channel looking at Emergency Aid Staged Award Level 3. We've produced this edit for those that either were there and want to revise the material, or missed it and want to catch up, or just for anyone that's interested in remote scouting. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more scouting activities. So just a reminder, we have a YouTube channel on Leatherhead District Scouts, and you'll have seen, or you may have seen, Andy's top class trailer for this evening's video, or this evening's meeting, using suspense music and drama, and you can watch that again. You can also watch me attempting to tie knots in my messy office, and how to tie a Turk's head woggle. So lots of stuff you can carry on doing there while you're bored and at home, and watch out for more videos on there as we get through this. I am recording this live tonight, so I'm going to edit this down so that those that can't be here can replay the majesty of Andy attempting to resuscitate a carrot a bit later. As well as Andy, I'm joined by Barney the dinosaur, who you can see on Barney Cam. I'm just waving on Barney Cam. And Barney's going to get a case of the choking later, so I'm going to have to unchoke him. So say hello, Andy, just so I can check my co-host is here.
Hello, Andy.
Yeah, very good.
Is that loud enough?
That's very good. Okay, so Andy and I run first aid training for leaders, the course we call First Response, and this is the contents of Emergency Aid Level 3. So it's a staged awards badge. So knowing how to dial 999 and get help from the emergency services, I'm assuming that you've done plenty of that, so we're not going to go through that. What we are going to go through is the rest of these things. So how to help a casualty who is unconscious and not breathing, how to help a casualty who is unconscious and breathing, how to help someone who's bleeding, someone with a burn, how to prevent and treat heat exhaustion and hypothermia, and how to help someone who is choking, and how to help someone who is having an asthma attack. Now this is going to be slightly practical as well as just watching the screen on the telly. So we're going to do a practical CPR session. So what I need you to do is go and find something to do CPR on. So Andy will show you his CPR victim now. It is Kevin the Carrot. I've got Barney the dinosaur down here. So you might find any cuddly toy. Please don't find a younger brother or sister or a parent. No practicing CPR on a live person, but find something to practice CPR on. If you can't think of anything else, just find a couple of cushions or something. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to go and find something to practice CPR on. Please also pick up paper and pencil while you're there, because there'll be a bit of a test later on. Pick up paper, pencil, and something to practice CPR on. Go, 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 go. Go, do it now, do it now. What else we got? Hold up the thing you've brought to practice CPR on. That's a fish. Thanks, Luigi. Those are quite small, Luke and Finn. Got something bigger. Find a cushion or something. Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, cushions, cuddly toys, all sorts of stuff. Adamant you've changed your hair. Yes, I know it's you, Aurora. Yeah. What have you got to do CPR on? It's a cushion, right? Fair dues. Okay, so you should have a cushion or something else to do CPR on. You should also have paper and pencil, because there will be, as I say, a bit of a test later. So how do you get your Emergency Aid Level 3? This is pretty easy. You joined in with tonight's practical training session. You take the short test at the end, and then we need to see a picture or a short video of yourself practicing good CPR technique on the thing that you've found. So you might need to rope in, unless you're really good with selfies, and you can do two-handed CPR while holding a phone. You might need to rope in someone else to help you take the photo or the short video of you practicing CPR. We also need to see your test answers, so you can write them on your bit of paper, take a picture of that. and send in your evidence, your photos, your short video, and your test answers to remotescouting@leatherheaddistrictscouts.org, remotescouting@leatherheaddistrictscouts.org. I'm going to remind you of all of this at the end, but this is pretty much what we need to see. So firstly, let's get into this. Where we always start first aid training is Doctor's ABC. And Doctor's ABC stands for danger, response, shout in brackets, airway, breathing, and then check for catastrophic bleeding. So Andy's going to go through all of that in a practical sense in a second, but let me explain slightly. So danger, whenever you find a casualty, someone's lying on the floor, whatever might have put them on the floor might be putting you on the floor next. So you should check for danger first. So it could be they've been hit by a vehicle, they've been electrocuted, gassed, sniper, whatever it is, you might be next. So check for that danger. Response is where you try and assess if they are responsive, if they're conscious or unconscious. So you shout, "Hello, are you okay?" And if they shout back, then you don't go and attempt to put your hands on their chest. Once you've assessed that someone is not responsive, then you shout for help. If you've got someone else around that can phone the emergency services on your behalf, then you get them to do that. Then you check their airway, check to see if they're breathing. So you open their airway, check to see if they're breathing. And then finally, just check and see if they are bleeding in one very big way from parts of their body. Because sometimes if they're losing a lot of blood really quickly, that might be the most important thing you have to sort out. So Doctor's ABC, the thing I've just gone over, is useful pretty much in these two scenarios. Scenario one, you have an unconscious, non-breathing casualty, and the answer is you're going to do CPR. And in scenario two, for an unconscious breathing casualty, you're going to put them in the recovery position. And there's many causes of loss of consciousness that I've put on the right over there. You don't really need to know all of those. They're from the adult course. So the theory for unconscious and not breathing. For adults, you go straight in and do chest compressions, 30 of those, and then 2 rescue breaths to try and get air back in their lungs. And for children, you do 5 initial rescue breaths first. And there's a simple reason for this. If there's someone like me or Andy lying on the floor, the reason is likely to be something to do with our heart. If there's one of you lying on the floor, the reason is likely to be something to do with breathing. So choking or asphyxiation or drowning, that sort of thing. So you don't need to worry too much whether it looks like a child or looks like an adult. You just make a best guess and get on with it. So Andy, perhaps if I stop sharing now, and you want to do the first little bit of this.
We're doing Doctor's ABC. So the first thing you're looking for is danger. Now, if any of you saw the silly little video of myself, you would have seen me walk into the room. When I was looking at Kevin, when he was on the floor, when I looked in the room, he had a cable wrapped around him. So what could the danger have been there? He could have been electrocuted. There could be all sorts of reasons he was on the floor, and if he had been electrocuted, I don't want to be electrocuted as well and be in the same predicament that he was. So you need to make sure when you go into the room, you're looking everywhere. So that could be up, it could be down, it could be around. You've got to consider, is something going to fall on you? Are you going to trip over anything? Is anything going to hurt you? There's one thing that you're not going to see necessarily, and that's gas. So the one thing I normally tell people when they're doing their first aid demonstration is to get their jazz hands out, because it shows they're looking everywhere. And possibly, if you've got one of those first aid instructors that gets a bit picky, have a good sniff of the room as you walk in, and you might be able to tell whether there's any gas. So we've checked for danger. We're happy that we're going to be perfectly safe going to help this person. We then need to look for the R bit, doctor. So DR, R is response. We're going to look for a response from our casualty. So we've got a casualty lying on the floor. We need to approach our casualty. The best way to approach our casualty is from the feet end. There's nothing worse than if someone is just asleep on the floor to see someone leering over their head from this end going, hello? So you need to approach from the feet and you need to try and gain a response from them. We can do that by going, hello? Can you hear me? Can you open your eyes? I don't believe I'm doing this to a carrot. Pretend his eyes are closed. Ask him to open his eyes. It's really good to get a visual response because they might not be able to speak. So open your eyes is a really good way of getting a response. If they don't do it from shouting, you need to make sure you shout in each of their ears. Can you open your eyes? Can you open your eyes for me, please? Can you open your eyes? Can you open your eyes for me, please? Still no response. I'm going to start to attack Kevin. Not badly. I'm just going to tap him on the shoulders. Trust me to pick a doll without shoulders. So you're going to tap him on the shoulders a good few times. Can you open your eyes? Can you open your eyes for me? Kevin, can you open your eyes? Still no response. There are a few other methods of getting a response. You want to invoke a little bit of pain. It's quite hard to show on Kevin. But on your collarbone, about here, he says, trying to find the camera he's looking at, you can just press down on that, and that actually does hurt a little bit if you did that on yourself now. And you'll find that that actually would probably wake you up. So, Kevin's not responding. The S, shout, help! The idea of that is to get some help here because you're going to need some help. He's not responding. So we've shouted for help. We're going to go on to the ABC bit. A, airway. You all want to see how I'm going to open the airway of this carrot, aren't you? Hopefully you remember this first aid training. I certainly will. So airway, we need to check and see what's happening with Kevin's airway. We need to tilt his head back. So to do that, you need to place your hand on the forehead. You need to put your 2 fingers or so under the chin and tilt the head back. Or in my case, I'm going to have to do something like that. So the head's tilted back, and what that does is that opens up the airway and allows air through. So tilting your head back opens up the airway and allows air through. If you all try putting your head down on your chin and taking a deep breath in, you might find it's more difficult than if you left your head right up and take a deep breath in. Simple as that. It opens everything up and it keeps your tongue out of the way. So we need to now, we're happy his airway's clear. One thing's also good at this point, open the mouth up and have a quick look inside, see if there's anything obvious blocking it. If there's anything obvious blocking the mouth, pull it out, fish it out, and just be wary there might be some sick in there too. Carrot soup. So we've ascertained that his airway's open. We've tilted his hair back, we've opened his mouth. We now need to check whether he's breathing. To do that, we're going to use multiple senses to hear, see, and feel whether he's breathing. We're going to place our head as close as we can to Kevin's mouth while still holding his head back. And we're going to look down his chest and see whether it's rising or falling. That's showing us whether he's breathing or not. We might be able to hear gasps of air moving through his mouth and lungs. We also should be able to feel air on our face. So feel his breath on our face. So there's 3 different ways, and we're going to do that for 10 seconds. So that's 10 seconds. And Kevin's not breathing. So, it's at this point, I would suggest that we call an ambulance. We now know we've got an unconscious, unresponsive casualty that isn't breathing. One of the first things they'll ask you when you call for an ambulance is the patient breathing? If the answer to that is no, they will get to you a lot quicker than they would if you said yes. It makes one of the parts of the call a priority. So at this point, hopefully your help's turned up and you can get them to call 999 for you And in this case, what you might also want to ask for is a defibrillator, an AED. And that'll either come on the ambulance or they'll send you somewhere to go and get them. In Ashton, I know there's one at the train station and St George's Church. You might find there's others in different places. I think some of the scout halls even have them in Bookham, for example. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. So we've got to this point. He's not breathing. The C bit, circulation, as you said, we're checking for making sure that he's not bleeding anywhere. Any obvious bleeds you would know about and you can tell them about. We'll look at treating the breathing first before checking anything else. So, now we've got not breathing, we're going to do CPR. The CPR consists of rescue breaths and compressions. Kevin is an adult, clearly an adult, he's huge. So we're going to start with 30 chest compressions, followed by 2 breaths, 30 chest compressions, 2 breaths. If Kevin was smaller, like his family, like his kids, which I've got over there somewhere, we'd do 5 rescue breaths first. But as he's an adult, we're going to do 2 first. We're going to do 2 after we've done our chest compressions. So to do chest compressions, you need to find the right point on your casualty. So the right point on your casualty is just between the breastbone, just in the middle of the breastbone, about here on Kevin. Oh, more about here. On a human, it's going to be right between the nipples. Easy target to find there, and straight down from the mouth. And that you'll feel there is about where your rib cage sort of joins together for the first time. That's where you're aiming for. Now, some people cross their hands over and link their fingers together. I wouldn't do this, as after a lot of compressions, that's going to start to be sore on your fingers. Place one hand, the palm of your hand, onto the area. Place the other one across at a different angle. If you want to interlink your thumbs, you can, but I would suggest you don't. You need to make yourself comfortable over the casualty. You're going to lock your arms out, lock them straight. You don't want them bent because you don't want them to bend under the pressure. Lock your arms straight, and then you're going to make compressions straight down about 2 or 3 inches. Okay? And we're going to do 30 of these. Now the speed we're doing these at is about 120 beats per minute. Or 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. Now if you want to know how fast that is, 30. You can have a look on Spotify, your favourite music streaming app, and there will be a playlist that is songs to do CPR to. You can have a look for that later. There's definitely a few. Hospitals have released it. So we're going to do 1 and 2. We're going to do that 30 times. We're then going to do 2 rescue breaths. To do that, we need to make sure the airway is still open. So we're going to tilt the head back, hold the chin. We're going to make a seal around the mouth. Whilst holding the chin up, we're going to pinch the nose, make a seal around the mouth with our mouth, and to put 2 good breaths in. Looking down the casualty to see their lungs inflate and deflate. You don't need to take huge deep breaths like you're blowing up a balloon. You're just trying to get a little bit of air in their lungs to make it inflate slightly. The critical bit here is if the lungs don't inflate, on the 2 attempts you have, don't try and do a 3rd or a 4th, just have 2 goes. If you fail, keep going on with the chest compressions, don't carry on with the breaths. And the only time you're going to stop doing that is when you're told to by a medical professional. And that medical professional will probably be an ambulance person who's come along. Don't stop when the ambulance crew turn up into your property. If they arrive now, pulled up at my house, I wouldn't stop until they came in and were ready to take over, ready to do something else for Kevin. I would wait until they told me, right, step away. Simple, eh?
So Andy, what's your favourite song to do CPR to?
I like Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. Another one, bites the dust, is quite a good one. However, don't hum that while you're trying to give CPR because it gives the whole wrong impression. Have you got any favourites?
Yeah. So my favourite is Nelly the elephant, and this might be one for the parent generation. But the key thing about Nelly the elephant is, as you do the whole chorus, Nelly the elephant packed trunk and said, right. If you do the whole chorus, you've got exactly 30 chest compressions. So you don't even need to count. You can let the song do the counting for you. So guys, what I want you to do is to find something to do CPR on and have a little practice at CPR. Give it a couple of minutes. Just make sure you can work out how to do it. Now might be the time to persuade a parent or a brother or sister to take a short video or a photograph of you doing it so you can submit it as evidence in the end. So just take a couple of minutes to do that now. Hello, Stuart.
Hi.
What's your question?
So for the defibrillators,
Yes.
how would you get them?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So in most places where there is a defibrillator, it's got instructions on the outside for how to get at it. So sometimes you might need to phone a number and someone will give you the code so you can get into the box.
Okay.
Or it's in the office of sort of a place that's open. So in the railway station, you can just go and grab it, or in most offices, they've got one on the wall and you can just go and grab it. But it will have it on the outside.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Hi. This
Hello.
is just you said with the breaths.
Yeah.
In most first aid boxes that I've seen, they've got revive aids.
Yeah.
How would you set about using one of them? Because most people say you should use one for hygiene reasons and all that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's lots of barriers you can use. So some of them are small barriers like that. There's just a bit of sheet with a hole in the middle, and you can use it to reduce your risk of catching anything from the casualty. So basically they're pretty straightforward. You just get it out of the bag, spread it over the mouth, and then blow into the hole in the middle. Others you've got like a mask that fits over the mouth with a bag that you squeeze. And they're even better because you have to do much less work yourself. But they're not necessary if you want to take the risk of blowing directly into someone's mouth at this point. Normally, I'd say you've got very little risk of catching things from people, but at the moment, who knows? If your casualty is unconscious and breathing, so in the sort of state where Andy did exactly what he did earlier, and did his danger, shouted for a response, and then tilted the head back. And incidentally, I've discovered that Barney the dinosaur is a lot better for tilting the head back than Kevin the carrot. So maybe next time Barney the dinosaur gets the treatment.
Yeah, neck is quite useful for bending the head back.
Yeah, yes, it is. I sense your pain though, Andy. So if you've tilted the head back with two fingers under the chin, 2 fingers on the forehead, put your head down for 10 seconds, and you actually see someone is breathing, then obviously there's no need to do CPR. But if you did that thing with Andy earlier, where you had your head tilted forward like this, you'll find lying on your back, your tongue will naturally fall to the back of your throat and block your airway. So it's very much better for someone that's unconscious and breathing to actually move them on to the side in a position we call the recovery position. And so if Andy isn't too tired, that's his next little demo.
Well, yeah, obviously Kevin's a bit difficult to put in the recovery position. I need a real casualty. Everyone meet my wife.
Hello.
Right. Let's hope this isn't the first image some people see, otherwise people might get talking, possibly call the police. So we found someone, we've asked them if they're okay, they're breathing, I've done all that, so we need to put someone in the recovery position. They'll normally be on their back, and we've decided that it is safe for us to move them. So what we're going to do, the first thing we might want to do is remove any glasses or jewellery or anything that's going to hurt them or impale them. Convenient, my wife wears glasses. Then what you're going to do is the arm that's nearest you, you need to bring out at a right angle here, and it's a convenient hand there that you can place the person's glasses in. There's nothing worse than if you need glasses than waking up in a recovery position and not being able to see anything because you need your glasses to see. So if you put them in their hands, they know where they are. So the next thing we need to do is we need to bring the hand that's furthest away from you across to the side of their face. This is going to help provide a bit of cushioning and means that the arm is out of the way when it comes over. So we're going to reach over, bring the arm round and place it on the back of the face, side of the face here. Now what you need to do is make sure you hold it there, because in real life the casualty wouldn't leave their hand there like that, they'd be pretty floppy. So bring your hand back over and make sure you hold it there. One thing I do now is make sure the legs are all straightened up. And then we need to bring the knee that is furthest from you up. We're going to do this by going around the outside. No going to the inside of people's legs, please. They generally don't like that. Round to the outside, lift it up until the foot is flat. Again, you'll need to hold on to that because if you don't, they will fall over. Making sure the area is clear behind you. You can use the knee to gently roll the person over until they fall on their side. Bring the knee that you just raised up to a 90-degree angle. Then make sure the head is still tilted back and mouth open. Should they be unwell, they're going to be sick that way. And recovery position. You need to make sure that every now and then you're still doing your check to see if the person is breathing. Otherwise, if they stop breathing, you need to put them back onto their back and start the process again, probably doing CPR. If they're going to be sat like this for a while, you might consider rolling them back onto their back and moving them over and rolling them to the other side. So shuffling yourself around completely, still pulling themselves towards you.
Shall we give everyone a couple of minutes to go and if you have got a handy casualty, brother, sister, willing parent or whatever, take a couple of minutes, go and see if you can work out how to put someone in the recovery position. Go and do it now. Go on, off you go. Okay, that's great, thank you. So as an interesting real-time update, I've just seen this on literally right now on the Surrey Scouts Leaders Forum, how to do CPR in a COVID-19 world. So the Resuscitation Council at the bottom there is the body that governs what we do in first aid. And clearly when people are infectious out there at the moment, you don't want to be doing the bit where you are sticking your mouth near to theirs to check for breathing. And you definitely don't want to be doing the rescue breaths. So the Resus Council has now recommended that you put a towel or a piece of clothing over the mouth and just do chest compressions. And the idea with just doing chest compressions is that there's enough sort of bellow effect of the lungs, moving air in and out of the lungs, that you get a little bit of oxygen in. So I repeat, this is a temporary thing. While COVID-19 is a real problem out there, this isn't the long-term advice. The long-term advice is exactly what Andy's just shown us. So this is what we call the chain of survival. And it says that your chances of survival increase by each of these things. So early access to a telephone to call for help, early CPR, early defibrillation, and advanced care. And the numbers below that, I put those numbers on. And what they are your chances of survival if you get those. So early CPR, 5% chance of survival. This is assuming that someone's on the floor because they've had some sort of cardiac arrest normally. Whereas if you have access to a defibrillator, then that rises to 75%. So a lot more chance of surviving than not surviving. And this is why you see defibrillators or AED, automated external defibrillators, everywhere now. because they make such a massive difference to your chances of survival in some sort of first aid incident. And don't be afraid of the automated external defibrillator. People are often worried about, that they're not trained on them or they don't know what to do with them. There are instructions. You open the thing up and there are instructions for where to put the pads. You turn it on, and it explains exactly what to do. And it will not administer a shock if it detects a heart rhythm, and it will not administer a shock unless it detects a heart that is in what they call fibrillation. So it's having an uneven rhythm. So you can trust it to do the right thing. So we're going to move on to look at some other first aid challenges, and the first is bleeding. Now we get a fair bit of bleeding in the Scouts because we work with knives and other sharps like saws, and when you teach bushcraft to Scouts, inevitably, occasionally they cut themselves with those knives. Andy, I don't know if you remember the worst cut that you've seen as a bushcraft instructor.
So it was on my first bushcraft camp. Someone managed to cut their wrist, and there was quite a bit of blood that was quite spurty, which was a bit unpleasant, but controllable, and they're absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But that was the worst one for me.
Yeah, we've seen a few. We had one that stuck a knife in the palm of his hand, and a few sort of deep cuts. The majority of the cuts we get, 99%, we can treat exactly in the field. So what you need to do with any sort of bleeding is immediately apply direct pressure on the wound, and preferably with something absorbent. So you'll find in your first aid kit all sorts of dressings and pads that you can place straight on there. But realistically on camp, it could be anything absorbent. So a bit of clothing or a cloth, your neckerchief. Assuming you've got one of those nice Fetch'em white ones, it's then your neckerchief's never going to be white again. But you might have really helped someone out with it. So immediately apply direct pressure and hold it on there. Now, one of the things that we do, if it's possible to get that person to hold the direct pressure themselves, sit them down in a comfy chair, get them to hold the direct pressure on, and you've got to hold it there for 10 or 15 minutes. If you keep sort of taking it off to have a look, has it finished bleeding yet? Has it finished bleeding yet? Then you're not going to have held it on long enough, and it's not ready to dress. Also, a mistake a lot of people make is they try and put a plaster on or some sort of bandage to stop it bleeding. That's not going to stop it bleeding. The plaster is just going to surf off while it's currently bleeding. So you have to apply the direct pressure to stop the bleeding first, and then clean it, and then use the plaster or the bandage to just keep it clean, to keep it sterile. And that's about it for bleeding. The big message is apply direct pressure immediately. So let's talk about burns. So we've got some horrific stuff there. So again, the big message with burns is, and you can get burns from all sorts of sources. So on the whole, with Scouts, it is we light a fire and something falls out of the fire onto someone, or you pick up something you shouldn't, or normally it's a frying pan or a saucepan. You touch something metal that's got hot and you weren't expecting it to be hot. And occasionally it's what we call a scald. So you've got hot liquid that you might pour over your hands, or in the case of one of our Scouts, he boiled up some water and then managed to pour it down his boot. And that was a pretty bad burn, because by the time we'd got his boot off to get some air to his foot, it had burnt him quite badly. So the big message is you have to immerse it immediately in cold water. The immediate action for any burn is immerse in cold water. And that's whatever you've got. If you've got a bottle of water right there, then you pour it over that burn. If you've got a river, then you dip it in the river. If you've got a tap, then you run it under the tap. Whatever you've got. Now, sometimes if you're out in the field and you've only got a small amount of water, you might consider putting that water in a bowl or pouring it over or catching it in something else and then repouring it and repouring it. But you have to immerse that burning in cold water. If you have access to cling film, ironically, cling film is really good for burns. It's sterile and it prevents oxygen getting to the burn, which makes it hurt less. Once you've done that, you can assess the severity of a burn. And how you assess the severity of the burn is that thing that I've got in the middle there. So its size, and one palm of your hand is 1% of your body area. So how many percent of your body area? The cause, if the burn is anything like radiation or chemical or electrical, then you would immediately take that to hospital to get the medical professionals to look at. Age, so in very young children or very elderly people, again, if you have a burn that's more than 1%, one palm of your hand, or a very deep burn, then you would treat it more cautiously. Location, so if it is anywhere like the face, the chest, or the genitals, again, you don't take any chances. Burns on your arm, your leg, your hand, you can normally treat in the field if they're not too big or too deep. But if you're in one of those areas, then you want to get it looked at. And then the depth of the burn, we talk about these days superficial, so that's it just looks red, including any sort of sunburn. Partial thickness, so you get a little bit of blistering if you've got a partial thickness burn, and then full thickness is when you can sort of see things in there. And I won't go into too much more detail than that, but we've got some gruesome pictures down there a bit below demonstrating superficial, partial thickness, and full thickness. In America, they talk about first, second, and third degree burns, but we tend to not talk about those because people can never remember which is the most severe of those. Is first degree burn the worst, or is a third degree burn the worst? Who knows? So we talk about superficial, partial thickness, and full thickness. I'm just going to pause there and invite you into the conversation. If anyone's got any questions or observations, or any gory stories about cuts or burns on camp, then just raise your hand and give us a shout.
Hello.
Hello, Ben.
About just go back to the recovery position.
Oh yes. Okay.
If the casualty has a broken leg or something, what would you do? Because you don't want to move the leg.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in general, if you may not be able to tell that they've got a broken leg because they might not tell you. So they if it's sticking out at a weird angle or there's bones sticking out and stuff, then don't move it. And I don't know if Andy's in a position to show you. Probably not. I'll tell you, if you can just see me at the moment, I'll just grab Barney the dinosaur.
Yeah.
So a way of maintaining the airway is just tilting the head back and keeping the airway open.
Right.
And you might want to just wait there until the emergency services come and relieve you.
Okay.
So someone who's in the recovery position, you can kind of leave them a little bit to an extent. You need to keep an eye on them. But someone who is lying on the back, you want to keep maintaining that airway and keep much closer attention to.
Okay.
It's a very similar answer to if you think someone's hurt their neck.
Yeah.
Normally you'll suggest don't move them. So if you think they've hurt their neck, then but you still need to keep their airway open. You can gently open their airway and hold their head really still in exactly the same way. And if they're going to be sick, then you might need to consider moving their head sideways or cleaning it out so they can still breathe.
Hi, you said about gory stories for like burns and that. It's not really gory, and it's not mine, it's my dad's. But he used to work in a kitchen. He was a chef, and one of their people spilt a giant pot of hot soup down them, and chef's white's quite thick, so that burn will stay there. But what they had, one of their people there who literally grabbed the 2 buckets of ice off the bartender, picked up the guy and put him in the giant sinks, put the cold water running and dumped the ice on top of him. The man then went to hospital, obviously, for burns, you didn't want to, because obviously he dumped it all down his front. They didn't know the extent of it. Got to hospital, turns out that because of the speed they'd gotten the ice water and ice and everything on there to cool the thing, by the time that like the hot liquid had actually made it through his chef's whites, it barely burnt him. He only got a superficial burn.
Yeah, that's really good.
What would have been a full thickness.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and the timing of that response just shows what's possible. So the faster you can respond to that, you know, and I remember I was on camp, and the scouts had an altar fire in a barrel, and the altar fire collapsed and sort of burning stuff went everywhere, and I remember lifting a 25 kilogram barrel of water, sticking it on my shoulder and running across the field, because the faster you can get water on someone that's burnt themselves, the better. Now, as it turned out, no one had burnt themselves, so I just looked like a fool running across the field with a 25 kilogram barrel of water. Okay.
This is my question. Would
Yep.
it only be water to be able to soothe the burn? Would there be certain kinds of other liquids you could pour on it?
I mean, water is the thing that's most common. I mean, if you've only got fizzy drink or something, then I guess you go for it. The problem is keeping the burns as sterile as possible, so sterile and clean, because you're going to need to dress it in the end. So certainly, if you've got nothing else, then cooling it with whatever you've got to hand is valuable, but you've then got to clean it out later.
So I have a story from Scouts.
Yep.
So I was doing something over the top of a pan, and I accidentally touched the side of the pan while it was still cooking something with my finger, and it really burned. I think it was like 2nd degree. Because there was sort of like a little pocket above it, and it was very painful, and
Yeah, well,
I did not enjoy it.
I think a lot of us have done that sort of thing where you've got something hot and you grab it or you put your finger on it, and you get a little blister. And if you've got something about the size of a 10 pence with a blister on it, then that's kind of okay. But if you've got a much bigger burn with a blister on it, a 2nd degree burn, then again you ought to go and have that looked at.
So you know the thing that was it said like what else you could use? Could you use milk to like sterilize it?
Again, you could do, and if you're in a kitchen and you've only got milk, you could pour cold milk on it. But I wouldn't prefer it to water. If you've got a tap in your kitchen and you can run that under the water, then do that. It's not better than water. It's more complicated than water. Okay, I'm going to make a bit of progress now. So going back to the slides. So we've looked at burns, and we have to also look at asthma. So people that have asthma, they tend to have inhalers with them, and if someone's having an asthma attack, then generally all you're going to do for those people is stop them doing something active, help them sit comfortably, reassure them everything's going to be fine, and help them take their inhaler. And inhalers come in all different shapes and sizes, but the one you see most often is the blue one that contains something called Ventolin. And Ventolin is particularly useful for someone that is that's having an asthma attack right then. The ones on the left, the ones that look red, they tend to not be as useful for when you're having an asthma attack. They tend to be something that people take long term, the sort of steroids, anti-inflammatories, and they help you manage the condition in the long term. And the purple ones in the middle are for people that I don't know, they're colorblind. They can't tell the difference between a blue one and a red one, so they've got a bit of both in. So if you they take them perhaps regularly every day and when they're having an asthma attack. So that there isn't really much more to say on asthma, except if someone's having a serious asthma attack and it starts to deteriorate, then you could end up with an unconscious non-breathing casualty. And that's kind of the bottom line for all of these things. The first things we show you are how to manage a non-breathing casualty an unresponsive non-breathing casualty, and unresponsive breathing casualty, is if you get any of these other conditions and things deteriorate, that's what you're going to be left with. That's what you're going to have to manage. And so choking. So there's a very British thing actually with choking, where I've heard stories of people who've been choking in a meeting, and they haven't wanted to cause the fuss, so they've kind of stood up and excused themselves from the meeting, like this, without saying anything, and then collapsed and died in the corridor outside. So don't be British about it. If you are choking, flap around a lot and point down your throat, because the first thing to do is recognize that someone's choking. So if someone's flapping around, pointing at the throat, the first thing you say is, "Are you choking?" And if they nod like this, encourage them to cough. Say, "Can you cough?" Like that. If they can't cough, you administer back blows, and you hit them 5 times in the back. By the way, don't practice this on your brothers, sisters, parents. This wouldn't be a good thing. The 5 back blows might do it. Whatever they've got lodged in their throat might dislodge and come out. But if not, there's abdominal thrusts. So I'm just going to attempt to pick up Barney the dinosaur and show you a bit of this. So here's Barney. Say hello, Barney. All right, I'm just going to stop sharing. So if you've got me on speaker view, you can see us nice and big now. So hello, Barney. Wave to Barney the dinosaur. Thank you. Okay, so let's imagine. Are you choking, Barney? Can you cough? Okay, so what I'm going to do is turn Barney around to start administering these back blows. So I'm going to support his chest with one hand, bend him over, and then take the heel of my hand like this and hit him between the shoulder blades. 1, 2, 3. By the way, if it dislodges and the food comes out after 2, don't hit him another 3 times. He won't enjoy it. 4, 5. Okay, so hit him 5 times. It hasn't come out. He's still choking. So this time I'm going to stand behind him, and I'm going to take my fist like this and place it just under his rib cage. I'm going to take my other hand, grab my own fist, and pull it up and in. That's up and in. So what you're attempting to do is place your hand just below his rib cage, pull up and in, and you're trying to force air out of the lungs. So hands like this, make a fist. With the other hand, hold the fist, pull up and in like that. And you can use your full body to help force like that. If you've done 3 of those, then you go around the cycle again. Can you cough, Barney? If you can't cough, administer the back blows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it still hasn't dislodged, in with the fist, pull up like this. Now they say you should do 3 cycles of this, and if you haven't managed to dislodge whatever it is within 3 cycles, then probably you're looking at an unconscious non-breathing casualty. So he will be lying flat on the floor like this, and you have to do rescue breaths, chest compressions, all the rest of it. So choking really is something that you can practice on soft toys, Kevin the carrot, Barney the dinosaur, or any of your other little friends at home. Please, as I say, don't practice this on real people. They won't thank you for it. So back to the slides, and we've done choking. Okay, so there's a couple of other topics we got to talk about. So the first of those is a sort of sequence that I call dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. And they're a kind of sequence. So you become dehydrated. Particularly, these are all sort of weather-related incidents. In the hot, sticky weather, you become dehydrated when you don't drink enough. At the point that you get into heat exhaustion, you've lost an excessive amount of fluids. You're still kind of sweating. You've got moist and clammy skin. You're feeling woozy. Your pupils are dilated, but your body has still got the ability to moderate its temperature. By the time we're talking into heat stroke, then your body has lost the ability to moderate its temperature. So someone with the real trick in this is preventing it. So in hot weather, when the leaders are saying, go and drink something, drink lots of fluids, this is what they're trying to prevent. Where you have someone with heat exhaustion, you can treat that. So you can remove excessive clothing, you can feed them small amounts of water, you can take them into a cool environment, and you can gradually cool them down. And they may be ill for a few hours, but they will recover for it. At the point that someone's in heat stroke, then effectively the stomach will have lost the ability to rehydrate itself, and so that person needs to go to hospital for intravenous fluids. So that's not something you can really treat in the field, except through some methods that Bear Grylls might show you on his television program, which I'm not going to go into here. Because they're a bit gory, but that's heat exhaustion and heat stroke. In this rather more temperate British climate, and particularly with a bit of chilly outside at the moment, the thing we talk about more often is hypothermia. So hypothermia is where you get cold, really cold, and again your body's lost its ability to warm up. So the first sign is, of course, you feel cold and you start shivering. Once you're kind of beyond the shivering stage, then your personality changes a bit. You become a bit angry, a bit irrational. You might be disorientated. You might feel drowsy. As you start declining in consciousness, so someone that is fully conscious is alert, where someone is slightly less conscious may only respond to their name. So they might say, Dave, and he only responds when you say Dave. Someone's less conscious than that only responds if you poke them, physically touch them. And then there's the umbles. So what do I mean by the umbles? Fumbles, tumbles, stumbles, mumbles, grumbles. All of those are signs that someone is falling into hypothermia. So in this British climate, it's the combination of wet, wind, and cold. And for those of us that go and do boating activities, if you take a tumble out of your kayak or out of your canoe, and then you're in a bit of wind, and the air temperature is cold, then you're going to very quickly get cold, because water transfers heat 25 times more effectively than air. So the thing you need to do is immediately take steps to halt that heat loss. So if the reason you're getting much colder is because you're wet, then you should stop and get a change of clothing, get out of your wet clothes, get into dry clothes, or add insulation around you to get out of the wind, or whatever you have to do to prevent yourself getting cold. And finally, there's this concept at the bottom there, rewarm at the rate of cooling. So if someone's been out in the weather all day and they've just been getting steadily colder and colder and colder and colder and colder, then what you shouldn't do is plunge them into a hot bath or sit them right next to a fire, because warming them really quickly will put pressure on the vital organs. So what you should actually do is take them out of that environment and warm them slowly. So wrap them up in, change the clothing, wrap them up in something warm, sit them next to someone else so you can share body heat, rewarm slowly. Whereas if someone comes out of a kayak or a canoe and they get instantly cold and wet, then you can get them changed, instantly warm and dry, and you get back on with it. So it's just this concept of rewarm at the rate of cooling. So at that point, again, I'm just going to stop sharing and pause for a second. because there may be questions out there.
Hello.
Hello, George.
I was just wondering, you know, when you said you have to slap when they're choking, you have to slap them on the back.
Okay, hold on a second, George.
How would you slap them?
Okay,
On the back?
right, I've got it. Okay, George, it's quite difficult to hear you. I don't know if you're in an environment where you've got more than one device connected, but your audio is a bit terrible. So whereabouts do you slap them? It's difficult to show you on a dinosaur, but it is broadly between the shoulder blades. So if he has one arm here and one arm here, then about halfway between the two, just a little bit down from the neck, in there. I don't have a real human to show you on, but it's kind of if I
You want me to try and find a real human to show
yeah
you?
find a real human, Andy, and we'll show
Borrow
that.
you real human.
Show a second. Round of applause for Andy's wife Emma.
Face that way. About here. You're going to be slapping right between the shoulder blades, just below the neck there. Obviously,
Brilliant.
I'm not going to do it that hard. Thank you, sweetheart.
You're welcome.
Hi. I was just wondering, can you get heat stroke and heat exhaustion at the same time?
So they're a bit of a sequence. You go from feeling dehydrated to heat exhaustion, and then if you don't stop it, then you go on to heat stroke.
Oh, okay.
So not at the same time, but in sequence. Heat stroke's a very, very bad thing. You don't want it to get that far.
Hello, this is a question about hypothermia.
Yep.
So you were saying about warming them too quickly and about them starting to murmur when they're starting to become unconscious. What would you do if they became unconscious?
So the bottom line of all of this, of course, is unconscious breathing or non-breathing casualty. So you have to look after them like that. If you're aware someone is really cold and they're an unconscious breathing casualty, you can place them in a recovery position and then put lots of insulation around them to try and keep them warm. But at that point, you are definitely looking for external help. You're trying to call in the emergency services.
Okay.
So all of your skills around telling the emergency services where you are, like six-figure grid references, how to find you, all of that starts coming into play.
I was just wondering, if you were treating someone who was choking, if you knew how to, could you perform the Heimlich maneuver, or is that similar to the abdominal thrusts?
Yeah, so abdominal thrust is the Heimlich maneuver. It used to be called that.
Okay.
So same thing.
I thought he was going to ask about performing a tracheotomy there. In the back of my head.
Yes, no, you should not do that. It's you need your pen and paper because it is test time. Yay! It's test time. So I'm going to read you the test questions, and if you can possibly write down your answers. In fact, I'm just going to try and make my life easy by putting all of this on the same screen so I can see you and the test at the same time. Okay, so I've got 10 questions for you. And all you need to do is write down the answers to these. I'm going to read them for you now. And I'm going to leave them up for a few minutes at the end of this session, just in case you need a couple more minutes to think up the answers. So question one, what does Doctors ABC stand for? What does Doctors ABC stand for?
We need some thinking music.
Like the countdown clock.
I was thinking more of the dun ding dun 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 ding dun Jeopardy.
Oh, okay. Okay, question two. How many chest compressions and rescue breaths do you give during CPR? How many chest compressions and rescue breaths do you give during CPR? Okay, here is question three. Why is a defibrillator important to someone's chances of survival? Why is a defibrillator important to someone's chances of survival?
Hi. For question 2, is it for children or for an adult?
Well, I left that deliberately vague, but I'll accept for an adult.
Okay. Thanks.
Question number 4. What position should you put an unconscious and breathing casualty into? What position should you put an unconscious and breathing casualty into? How are we doing, Dylan?
I've done that question now.
Okay. Do you want to give me a shout when you want me to carry on?
You can carry on.
Thank you, Dylan. So question 5. What immediate action do you take when someone is bleeding? What immediate action do you take when someone is bleeding? Well, thanks for the thumbs up, Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan. Yeah. Ready to go?
Yeah.
Where do I get to? Question 6. What immediate action do you take to treat a burn? What immediate action do you take to treat a burn? Yeah, I see Aurora giving me the thumbs up there. How about you, Dylan? Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, question 7. How can you help someone who is choking? How can you help someone who is choking? I'm expecting a slightly longer answer this time. Ready, Dylan?
Yeah.
Thank you. So question 8. How can you prevent heat exhaustion? How can you prevent heat exhaustion? Ready, Dylan?
Yeah.
Okay, question 9. Only 2 more to go. What are some signs of hypothermia? Give me some signs of hypothermia. Oh, Aurora, Phoebe, are you going to come and argue with me now? Hello, Aurora.
Did you say hyperthermia or hypothermia?
Hypothermia.
So, okay, thank you.
Too cold. The other thing I call heat exhaustion. Phoebe, hello.
How many examples do we have to give?
Oh, I don't know. What do you reckon? 5?
No.
4? 7?
No.
Okay. You ready for question 10 yet?
Yeah.
How about you, Phoebe? You on top of this? You can nod. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question 10. What are some things you might find around the house that are useful in first aid? What are some things you might find around the house that are useful in first aid? Alex?
For question 10,
yeah.
Can I just put down my first aid kit because I have a first aid kit right next to me?
Yes, you can.
That I got for my birthday.
You can put down your first aid kit, but if you just put down your first aid kit, I'll be slightly disappointed because I mentioned 2 or 3 other things.
I can't remember what they are.
Think about what you might treat a burn with, and think about what you might. And the other thing.
I'm thinking of these because you can make like an energy drink for them.
No.
I heard a thing a few days ago. Sorry.
It's definitely water, but also that stuff you might wrap around a burn if you know, once you've cooled it. Other people are nodding, or perhaps if someone's bleeding. Yes, Aurora, wrapping around. Thank you. Good.
Okay. Yeah, bandages.
Yeah. Good plan. So those are the questions which I'll leave up at the end. But just a reminder, how you get your emergency aid level 3. So you need to join in with tonight's practical training session. Take the short test that I've just read out for you. Take a video or a picture of yourself doing good CPR technique, and submit your evidence to, and I read it slightly wrong last time, so remote scouting at leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. Remote scouting at leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. That will come straight through to me, and I will punt it on to your leaders to make sure your records are updated and you get that badge awarded.
When we do the video for the CPR,
yep.
Do you also have to do when we go up to them, like do the doctor's ABC, or just the chest compressions and the mouth?
So all I really need to see is you doing proper CPR technique. However, if you want to make the whole video, that's absolutely fine. You're probably not going to be able to email it to me though, because it's going to be too big. So just a few seconds of you giving it.
We've already had someone sent us an email, Malcolm. I noticed come through while we've been talking, and they've uploaded it to their Google Drive and sent you a link so you can download it. So that might be one way of doing it.
Yeah, perfect. Also, if your group has a Facebook page, and you want to post a couple of pictures of you doing CPR or a video of you doing CPR on that Facebook page, just so that the rest of the Scouts can see you having fun, then absolutely do that as well. And it's normally your parents will have access to that.
Hello.
Hello.
You know, we were talking about stories of what happened, like in camps with burns and cuts and stuff. Can I tell you one of my stories?
Go for it.
So I was whittling a stick, and I accidentally folded the penknife back on my hand.
Oh yes. Yeah, well, a lot of us have been there. That's why when we do bushcraft, we used fixed-bladed knives. So you know the sort of Moro knives. I'm just looking to see if I can find one now.
One thing we generally dislike as Scout leaders is pen knives.
Yeah.
Normally because the ones Scouts bring with them have got 250 different attachments on it that they tend to open all up at once and stab themselves with. Or they don't maintain it very well and the knife isn't that sharp. So they put a considerable amount of effort to try and do something really simple, which then means that they're putting so much effort in, the knife goes through their hand, which is a bit bad.
Does anyone recognise these? You might have them down your hut. Yeah. So these are fixed bladed knives, which means that when you're carving with it, you can't fold it back in your hand. And these require just a bit more care and attention, and they need a bit more security. You have to not be just strapping them on in public and walking around. But they're much better for the sort of stuff we do in the Scouts.
I was just saying hello.
Were you? Okay.
Anyone?
All right, Claire. I'll tell you what. I'll leave you on for a minute. You can talk to us for a minute. Thanks, Noah.
Okay, so I've got a burn story, which is actually my mum's. So she was filling up a lighter for our fire, and she had accidentally ignited it, and the whole room filled up with flames and burnt her eyebrows off. Everyone laughed at it after that, but she wasn't very happy about it. So
yeah, that sounds absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Lots of people have kind of barbecue accidents. You know, you try and light a barbecue and then you get the big tub of barbecue fluid and you give it a good squirt, and of course you get a flame that shoots back.
Yeah.
And then you panic and flap it around and set fire to your garden. But Scouts would never do that sort of thing, would we?
No.
I heard the penknife story earlier, and after the Christmas where I got my penknife, like when I was fairly brand new to it, I was whittling a stick, and I accidentally cut my finger on the penknife, and I still have that penknife without the blood. And basically, because the stick was fairly sharp, I had poked myself on the wrong end of the stick because I was only 9 at the time with my penknife, and I thought I was going to lose my penknife. So yeah, funny, painful penknife story.
Well, I must admit, I cut myself a few times when I was a Scout, and I've still got some scars on my finger from those days. But
okay.
So you know, there's no shame in it. But Andy's managed to cut himself more recently than that while we were leading a bushcraft course.
I was helping lead a bushcraft course, and it was my job that one of the jobs that weekend was to run the first aid demo. So I thought on the Saturday before it'd be a good idea to slice a nice chunk out of my hand and demonstrate how to get myself to A&E to get it stitched up. So still got a scar on my hand about it. You won't be able to see it on this, but right on the pad of my hand. Fortunately, I missed everything, but I came back the next day and did a first aid demo, so I was all right.
A lot a lot of bushcraft demos involve the thumb of your right hand because you're sort of pressing down on stuff or doing stuff like this. And on that very same course, as I was breaking sticks to light the first fire of the weekend, I managed to stick a bit of stick in my thumb. So Andy had one hand, and I had a cut on my thumb. So eventually we did a demonstration of bannock making. It's a sort of trail bread you make. Andy was going to do the whole thing but couldn't. So he did the voiceover while I did the demo left-handed, because that was the best we could do. we just ran out of people.
When I got a burn story, when I was either a baby or about 3, my mum had put me down on the side, and she had just finished making a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And me just being the adventurous baby, decided to stick my hand in there and then burnt myself. And it swelled up.
Yeah, we've all been there, because kids will just pull anything off anything and hot liquids. It's a nightmare, isn't it? Ollie Thornton, I've unmuted you. You can join the conversation at any point.
Hello. I wanted to weigh in on the cut thumb stories.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, so you won't be able to see, but a few months ago at Scouts, while prepping to run a bow drilling demo, I managed to slice my thumb pretty much in half, and that was a fun trip to A&E.
Yeah, there's lots of leaders around the county that I think I'm up to about 4 now who I've taught how to sharpen an axe, and then they've responded by attempting to put the axe through their hand within a week or 2. So, if we teach you how to sharpen something, please don't respond by sticking it through another part of your anatomy. Claire, have we heard from Maisie yet?
Yes, I do. She had 2 questions. First one being, could her and Ethan submit a video of both of them doing CPR together, like the practice thing, not on each other, but like a video of both of them?
Absolutely, yes, no problem.
And question 2 was, could you show the questions to the quiz so that they can continue?
I will absolutely do that. We're just, what we're going to do, we're going to have a little chat. I'm just going to remind you of the requirements again and where to submit them, and then I'm going to leave the quiz questions up and then reopen the chat at the end for anyone that wants to batter that around. I'm just going to, I've got about a dozen people down there that have all got their hands up. So I'm just going down to people that I haven't heard from yet.
I mean, if you do have questions after this, do feel free to email that same email address with questions, and myself or Malcolm will attempt to get back to you with some advice or answers to them, if that helps.
You know, a number of you have put your hands down now that I've said that. Phoebe, you're still there. Just attempting to unmute you. Hello, Phoebe.
I've got a story.
Okay, go on then.
It's my friend. So when she was younger, she was learning to walk, and she cut her lip because she fell into a radiator.
Nice.
Yeah. It's kind of gruesome.
So I was just trying to work out how to mute Andy so we couldn't hear him eating his dinner. There we go. That's it. That's him out. Okay. Any final questions? Ethan, I'm just going to come to you. Ethan?
Okay, so I've put in the remote scout learning at Leatherhead Scouting, and it's taken me to the website, but where should I go from there?
Right, that was an email address. So remote scouting at leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. If you use your email client, send an email to that address.
Okay, because I put in Google. All right, cool. Thanks.
So not a web address. That's an email. Looks like, Andy, you're trying to say something now. And I've muted you from this end, so you won't be able to. Hello, Andy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I don't know why you could hear me eating dinner, because I could have sworn I muted myself. Anyway, yeah, that's leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk is a website, and it's our website, and there is a page on there with the remote scouting resources. So if you get there by accident, you will be able to find this email address, which will be detailed on there as well.
Okay, marvellous. Right, I've reopened the chat, so you can share stories or whatever you want to say. Say hello to your friends on the chat. While we're at it, I'm just going to remind you of this. So what I need to see, your test answers, a couple of pictures or a short video of yourself, remote scouting at leatherheaddistrictscouts.org.uk. And here are all the 10 test questions. I'm just going to leave these up for a few minutes. Can someone explain what the just typing F is all about? We see that on chat all the time.
It means following, doesn't it?
Wait, it doesn't like it does on Facebook, but
it's lots of D's at the moment. Perhaps someone's fallen asleep on the D key.
You'll have keyboard face.
Nose is pressing or something.
Yeah. Anyone wants to put their hand up and explain the F thing? Looks like Oliver Thornton, you've got your hand up.
He's young.
Yeah.
That was already up. Sorry, I forgot to take it down. Silly me.
Right.
I think it's just pressing the first letter they can get hold of.
No, but it's always F. It's always F.
Quite a few D's as well.
Claire, you're waving at me. You strike me as being a sensible individual. I'm going to unmute you and have a chat. Hello, Claire.
F is basically this whole thing with like, I think it's like gaming and that. It's respect. So you press F in the chat for respect.
Okay.
So now everyone's spamming that into the chat.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm getting old, but respect doesn't begin with F. I mean, you know, I don't get it, mate. I don't get it. Why
The
F?
whole meme is press F to pay respects.
Right.
It's from meme culture and like gaming and that. It's basically just press F to pay respects.
Yeah.
I don't know where it started.
There are a few people pressing R as well. Do I want to know about R?
That's got to be R for respect, right?
Hopefully.
I don't know.
Yeah, was it the Fourth Scout Law? Do you know the Fourth Scout Law, Claire?
Not.
Well, it goes a bit like this. Scouts are G's and belong to a worldwide family.
In it.
Scouts belong to a worldwide family of scouts.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Scouts are G's and belong to a worldwide family. In it.
In it, fam.
In it, fam. I mean, brup. I'll edit that bit out later.
So I was just Googling youth slang.
Ute. With the Ute. Because we're down with the Ute. And speaking about Ute, what's with the yeet? Claire? Yeet?
Oh, yeet comes from a meme.
Yeah.
Yeet. Very, this empty. Yeet. Keep it clean.
It's basically someone finishes a drink and then yells yeet and throws it into the bin.
I never thought I'd get old and like the Ute would make no sense to me anymore. But, you know, it happens. It happens to all of us. Just imagine one day you could be presenting on Scout About FM or Scout About FM, as we call it. Andy.
Next year.
Yeah. And incidentally, if you don't recognise Andy's voice, he does the early breakfast show on Scout About FM.
I don't think any of them have been to Scout About. Maybe some of the explorers.
Yeah. Well, Scout About is great. Scout. I'll put some T's and D's in. Scout About is great. But Scout About FM is properly special.
The early breakfast show with Andy Marlow.
Andy Marlow.
They put me on early in the morning so no one has to listen to me.
Scout About FM.
Apart from the 200 people queuing for the tuck shop at 6 a.m, which doesn't open until 10, which is weird.
That was interesting.
Desperate for sugar.
There's still 89 of you out there, unbelievably. I'd have thought some of you would have left by now. So, last Scout About's great, by the way. Unfortunately, cancelled this year. But when we're back, do go to Scout About. Go next year, and say hello to Andy. Last time, when he was presenting, his producer set off the fire alarm in the whole building, by spraying his deodorant in the toilet, which
it was a bit worse than the producer. It was the station manager.
Station manager,
the one in charge.
See, obviously I don't know the correct terminology. Maybe Andy was the producer. Who knows? Or were you the talent?
I was the talent at that particular point.
Indeed. Anyway, so Andy's producer or station manager sets off the fire alarms, and then everyone walks out of the building and they're standing outside. You see Andy in the middle of his radio show, standing outside the radio station, looking at it, and it's basically on autoplay. We're getting hits from the 60s and 70s, and there's nothing Andy can do about it. When no one's there, it just plays what it likes. And you know, he's kind of wringing his hands because he can't do anything. And at this point, actual Trumpton turned up, like the proper fire service, turned up on the field, and had to go in and make sure that there was no fire. You know, I'm not saying that quite a number of the people at Scoutabout were really pleased to see some firemen, but it certainly raised the interest of lots of guides and some of the scouts early on in the morning. That's all I'm saying.
What was more amusing is we actually had firefighters on site permanently, but they were all asleep during all this, and the fire alarm automatically rang the fire brigade.
Yeah, there was no way of stopping doing that. Didn't they nearly bash a gate in as well?
Oh yeah, they nearly drove through a gate that we had locked to not let any cars in because they thought the place was on fire.
Indeed. Right, I'm going to assume that anyone that needs those questions has those questions by now. So I'm going to stop that and put you back on gallery view so I can stare into your lovely faces.
Oh, hello. Do you still want to know about the origin of F?
If Claire hasn't explained to your satisfaction, you could explain further if you like.
Well, a while ago there was a video game which involved going to a funeral, and you had the ability to press the F button on your keyboard to pay respect.
Ah.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. Okay. I can't do this as well as The Rock, but this is the people's eyebrow. There you go. Are you unwrapping a parcel there, Claire? You're still on mic. Yeah, go on then.
So one night when we were camping in Woo-Woo,
Woo-Woo?
yeah, we had a fire, and we were toasting marshmallows, and my marshmallow caught on fire and then landed on my finger, and then it started to burn as well.
Would that be sore by any chance?
Yeah, it was burning with amber on.
Yeah. Has it got unexpectedly dark where you are there, Sam? Because you are but a shadow. Oh, hello. There you are.
I'm in my room. There.
That's my.
I dyed my hair.
Yes. Yeah,
No.
I need a haircut, but I'm unlikely to get one for months. So
Oh, hi. Last week I told you to look at burrito blankets, and this week you have a burrito blanket.
Okay.
And I really badly cut myself on bushcraft camp. Badly cut myself in bushcraft camp.
And how did you
I
do
got
that?
Peppa Pig plaster.
Yes. So again, those not the don't go camping with myself, Andy, Alan. You won't know that the thing we have in our first aid kits, we tend to have princess plasters or Paw Patrol plasters, Peppa Pig plasters, whatever we find in the shops that just give you a little smile. I particularly like the princess plasters because they come with little sticky stars, and then when someone cuts himself, you put the princess plaster on them, and then you put the little sticky star on their forehead, and then you can track who's cut themselves.
Burrito
blanket. Thanks, Albie.
You're welcome.
Just muting you.
Hello.
Hello, Ben.
I got a story about a couple of years ago on when I was on scout camp. I was cutting up these big logs with this big old rusty saw.
Yeah.
And I slipped, and it went straight over my thumb and my first finger, and I was bleeding quite badly. So that was quite bad.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Of course, if you get cut by something rusty, you're probably going to need a tetanus injection. So don't.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get a booster over a few years on the NHS. No
Oh,
doubt.
yeah, I had one this year already.
I know in the text they saying boomer, so boomer is an old person.
Okay. A boomer. Yeah.
Baby boomer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a boomer. So you ought to be really careful with that, because the likes of Andy and I are not in fact boomers. We're Gen X. We're Gen X, and then millennials are Gen Y, and then after that it's Gen Z. So boomers are kind of our parents, not actually us. So be careful. Learn your generational theory. Go and Google that one.
Can I tell you a story when I was young?
Okay.
Sure.
But you are our last story, because we're just over 9 o'clock now. So
when I was young, I went to climb up the bridge, but there was like wires. Then like my head, and then like there's wire, and I banged my head on it. Then my head kept on going up and down, banging on the bridge. Then my whole face started to fill with blood.
That's just
It's a lovely story to finish on, isn't it?
I think that requires the people's eyebrow again. There we go.
Well, stitches, but...
Yeah, nice. Okay, folks. Look, we've finished the end of Scout Night. So I'm just going to mute everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I think we've been pretty clear what you need to do to get your first aid level 3, emergency aid level 3. So until this time next week, have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Give us a wave now and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all. Thanks for watching our video, and congratulations if you made it all the way through to the end. We had a lot of fun delivering emergency aid to scouts remotely. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want more, remember to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, where we'll be publishing more videos for how you can do scouting remotely. Until then, stay safe and see you next time.